This sign can represent physical characteristics. So basically what you look like. You might have heard or read something that says certain signs look a certain way. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll look at people that have that sign and then they don't look like that. Well, another way to look at it is if you find out the sign over a person's first house or their rising sign. Sometimes you will find that the characteristics listed for one sign is actually attributed to that person because that's the sign that's over their first house. And some examples are this, like sometimes if a person has Leo over their first house, they might have really long, thick hair. If a person has a sign like Scorpio over their first house, they might have really large eyes and a penetrating stare. A good example of that is actually Prince, the late legendary artist Prince. He was a rising Scorpio. His sun was in Gemini, but he was a rising Scorpio. And there was always a lot of talk from people about if you meet him, don't look in his eyes and stuff like that. And someone said he later mentioned that, and he said, I've never told people not to look me in the eye. But there were a lot of jokes from comedians about this because they looked in his eyes and they felt almost hypnotized by his stare. And some people were just downright intimidated by him because of his stare. So if a person has a Scorpio over their first house, they may have a really penetrating stare and are really big eyes. And of course, Prince had really big, pretty eyes. Another thing you might notice, the rising sign or the first house sign covers, is the early years of childhood life. This can have to do with how you act based on your place in your family. So you might notice a person who has Gemini over their first house was a bit of an entertainer in their household growing up. Maybe they entertained their family, their parents, siblings. One example of that, I believe, is Will Smith, the actor Will Smith. So, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the sign over his first house is Gemini. I have listened to his autobiography, and he described his childhood. First of all, there were some challenges in his childhood for a number of reasons, or different reasons. I think he had a typical childhood, but for the most part, the thing that stuck out to me about his childhood is he's been very vocal about the fact that his father was abusive towards his mother. And he took on the role of entertaining people in his household because he felt like if he entertained people in his household, specifically his father, his hard disciplinary father, and he can make his father laugh, his father would not be angry and he would not beat anyone, rather it was his siblings or his mother. So the sign over the first house can sometimes, overall, it can dictate how a person shows up in the world, their persona. And this is something that's really active. It's not really passive. It's something that you will probably consciously do. The sign over the first house is a sign that you will consciously want to be like, or the traits that you will consciously try to portray. That's what you want to be known for. No matter who you actually are, and trust me, you can actually be someone very, very different from your rising sign when a person looks at your sun, your moon, the Mercury, Venus, all of that. Once all of that is broken down, you could be someone totally different. You might want your persona to be outgoing, but inside you may be a very insecure and very shy person. That's how we often misunderstand each other and misunderstand people, which is one of the reasons why I like astrology so much. It allows you to really break things down and really have a better understanding of people and where they are coming from. So that's the first house, the very active house that shows how you show up in the world.